It's been estimated that most people spend between 80 to 90% of their waking hours in some form of interpersonal communication, whether it be at home, work, or with a group of friends. In fact, in 2016, in their list of the top attributes employers want to see in new college graduates, the National Association of Colleges and Employers ranked interpersonal skills at number 11. While that's impressive enough, look at how many of the other attributes in the top 19 indirectly relate to interpersonal communication: ability to work in a team, written and verbal communication skills, flexibility and adaptability, friendly, outgoing personality, and tactfulness. But what is interpersonal communication? Most people define it as one-on-one, face-to-face communication. However, that's an inaccurate description. First, just because you are interacting with someone one-on-one doesn't mean you are engaged in interpersonal communication, and we'll come back to that. Secondly, not all interpersonal communication occurs face-to-face. You can communicate interpersonally via phone, text, email, Skype, FaceTime, social media, etc. Thirdly, interpersonal communication can take place between more than two people. The key characteristic is quality. Interpersonal communication occurs when you treat someone as a human being, not as the role that they play. I'll leave the specific definition of interpersonal communication to the textbooks because each textbook defines it differently. However, there are definitely some similarities among the definitions, the first being that interpersonal communication is a unique form of communication. It differs from other forms of communication like intrapersonal, which is communication with yourself, small group, especially task-oriented groups, public, as when a public speaker addresses an audience, and mass media, when the source sends the same message to multiple audiences, like television, radio, newspaper, Facebook, and so on. Interpersonal communication is also different from impersonal communication. Remember the previous discussion about how it's not really one-on-one communication, and that a key definer is quality? This leads us to German religious philosopher Martin Buber's I-it, I-thou philosophy. Okay, I know this language is a bit archaic. Change the word thou to you, and it probably makes more sense. Buber's philosophy is that these two approaches represent two ways that we as humans can relate to each other. Consider a continuum with I-it on one side and I-thou on the other. I-it means that you interact with people based upon their roles. We communicate and relate to people based upon what they can do for us. For example, we communicate with the server at a restaurant because he or she can provide our meal in an efficient and pleasant manner. You would communicate the same way with Sally, who serves you on Monday, as you would communicate with Jose, who serves you on Friday. You are much more detached. The other person, then, is a means to an end. On the other side of the continuum, I-thou relationships are unique. You adjust your communication based upon the other person. The other person is a unique individual, and you treat him or her that way. The relationship you have with a romantic partner meets the criteria for an I-thou. You communicate much differently with this person than you do with a server, or a professor, or a coworker, or even another student in your Spanish class. The communication is more personal and, for lack of a better word, more rich. Okay, you probably have your favorite server at your favorite restaurant. You choose to sit in Sally's section. You greet her warmly by name, you inquire after her children, moving closer to the I-thou side of the continuum. But that communication is still not as deep or as rich as the communication you have with your close coworkers, family members, best friends, or romantic partners. Think of those relationships on the I-it side as characterized by impersonal communication, and those on the I-thou side of the continuum using more interpersonal communication. Interpersonal communication also involves some aspect of mutuality, which means that all involved in the communication are affected by it. This mutual influence is also based upon a continuum. The influence could be minor. A stranger's rebuff could bother you for a short time, while your best friend's deep disclosure could significantly affect your mood and your relationship for a long time. And this mutuality, combined with interpersonal communication, helps people manage their relationships. Another common aspect is the concept of intrinsic rewards. again related to Buber's philosophy of human interaction. What do you get out of your interpersonal communication? The enjoyment of the interpersonal communication and the ensuing relationship. Thus, the reward is internal or intrinsic. What do you get out of your impersonal communication? You get served food, your mail delivered, a better understanding of Spanish, a paycheck, all rewards external to the communication, or extrinsic rewards. In interpersonal relationships, you will adjust your communication, both verbal and nonverbal, to the person you're communicating with. Thus, interpersonal communication is unique. As a simple example, in impersonal communication, you might address someone by his or her role, dear student. However, interpersonal communication involves treating the student as a unique individual, dear Jasmine. Of course, just calling someone by name isn't enough to classify the communication as interpersonal, but you get the gist. The more interpersonal the communication is, the more personalized the communication and the relationship becomes. You start disclosing more personal information about yourself as your partner does to you, hearkening back to the concept of mutuality. This takes place in a variety of settings beyond face-to-face, via phone, texting, Skype. While the medium or channel may affect the quality of the communication, it doesn't automatically disqualify it as interpersonal in nature. Finally, interpersonal communication is irreplaceable. You can't replace it with something else. You won't feel as fulfilled, valued, or listened to. All of this should help you understand why it's important to study and improve our interpersonal communication. Paying attention to our interpersonal communication can improve our relationships with our romantic partners and close friends, people we choose to spend time with, as well as though we may not have as much say in who we interact with, like our family members, co-workers, and clients or customers, and even strangers. Good interpersonal communication also has a positive effect on our physical and emotional health. We feel better. In fact, we are better when we engage in good quality interpersonal communication. The bottom line is that the quality of our communication directly correlates with the quality of our lives. So if you want to live an enjoyable life, pay attention to your interpersonal communication.